Australia, 1897. Dear fellow countrymen, just a few lines to let you know that this story is going to be all about me.
Though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing.
Did she say anything to you? I mean, did she tell you?
Tell me what?
Tell you, you know, well, who she is.
I don't know what you mean.
She's your mum.
I sat down on the bench under this colossal dome. There was another bloke sitting near me. He looked at me and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "What do you mean, what do I think?" He said, "What do you think about God?" I said, "I'm unconvinced. What do you think?"
My mother wouldn't like it. My mum wouldn't like it, she'd hate it. All parents, mum and dad, both would like their daughter to be a virgin all their life, I reckon.
Some mothers, they think that the girls are going to go out getting pregnant, so they don't let them go out with boys, which is not fair.
I promise to kiss you before you die.
You have a daughter. And a son.
I so wish I could give my girls a more just world. But I know you'll make it a better place.
Must be contagious.
What's that?
Washing one's hair.
And what can you bet?
10 guineas.
It's not enough.
What is enough?
Your inheritance.
My father may live until he's 100. He's not a rich man anyway.
It makes no difference.
And you will bet.
Same?
The same amount.
The same. My inheritance.
But you already have it.
Yes.
Your works.
Yes, everything.
Always remember who you are not. From the moment you leave the ground to the moment you land safely back in England, you are Dominique Gilbert from Paris.
Welcome to France, Dominique.
People are betraying their neighbours to the Gestapo.
My only shame is I lived long enough to see my country betray itself. I tell you, she'll die fighting the Germans.
Stop!
She had a multi-fluorescent coloured muumuu dress on, rings across all her fingers, flamboyant, intimidating.
She had her beautiful bright red hair. I always thought it was cochineal pink.
She was sort of like a superstar.
In Australia, we're very lucky to have Florence Broadhurst.
Thank you for coming.
Mr. Harry Houdini announces the most extraordinary experiment that will prove beyond all reasonable doubt the existence of an afterlife.
There is an inscription, oh, I know. No. Don't tell me.
10,000 American dollars, Harry.
Next. Last night I dreamed a dream. A lady in a garden. And she was waving as if beckoning someone to her.
I think you're the one we've been waiting for.
I've got to advertise myself. You know.
You don't have to advertise yourself. I think there's a film called My Brilliant Career, and I think we saw it all summed up there. What a fabulous length and breadth of work, and it's an absolute pleasure, everyone, to welcome Gillian Armstrong in conversation. Thank you very much for coming along. Thanks, guys. My name's Kate Roger, and I won't be the biggest part of this conversation, I promise, regardless of the fact that I work in television. It's going to be all about Gillian, and we've had a little bit of a taster, of course, and a lot of you would have attended her awesome workshop. I often find in life it's what you do wrong sometimes that matters more than what you do right. Mel Gibson might agree, and with that it sounded amazing. 10 ways to fuck up your film sounded a very educational workshop. This is getting to the heart, I think, of Gillian and her career and some of her films, and getting some juicy gossip and stories and some insight into what has been an absolutely brilliant career. How does that sound? I'm not going to ask you anything too personal, Gillian, or I might, but you can choose whether you wish to answer it or not.
Fine,
This is going to be
and they can ask some questions.
That's
at the
exactly
end.
right, and it's not just about me, because I know there'll be questions that you guys want to ask yourselves. So we'll have a little bit of a chat, and at the end of it, there'll be a Q&A. But it can be a bit like a stand-up comedy, if anyone wants to interject with a question. It's not like filmmakers to be quiet for too long, is it? So you can just holler out. But Gillian, let's start from the beginning. It's a wonderful thing to have a career as a filmmaker that's not just feature, but documentary as well, convoluting and running itself through your career. Do you have a passion for either more than the other?
Well, yes, no, I think my passion really is, it's a complicated situation. My passion is to be a drama storyteller, and my background was visual arts, and so I found that when I was actually at film school and we had the documentary exercise, I went in there and cajoled and said, I don't want to ever make documentaries. Why am I doing this? And they let me compromise by doing a drama documentary. But of course, when I got out of film school, I had to earn a living, and then I got a couple of early jobs for the Craft Council Australia to do, a half-hour film on an artist or something. And as I said, my background is art, and I was thrilled to be paid. And then I was asked to do this documentary in South Australia. A half-hour or 20-minute might have been, a documentary about what it's like to be a 14-year-old girl, which I called Smokes and Lollies. And it's really that documentary that grew, that has continued throughout my career. And so, on one hand, I'm passionate about the whole process of making a feature and working with actors and so on, and sound and design. But I've got to say that the privilege that I've had of following now Kerry, Josie and Diana's lives for 30 years, because I've done them 14, 18, 25, 32 and 47, has been both something that I feel incredibly privileged that they've allowed me back into their lives, and also I've realised, and I do believe, that documentaries have a greater power to change society, because it is real people and real lives, and I've been very proud of the fact that over the years those documentaries have educated Australians and educated Australian politicians about what it's like, the life of being a working class girl or being an unmarried mother. So as I said, the artist in me likes doing the features, but the social worker in me is very, very proud of the documentaries.
Over that stretch of time, what have you seen changing in the field of documentary making? Is it stronger than it was 30 years ago? Is it more resilient?
I think that we've always had wonderful documentary filmmakers, and I do believe that you know, I've got great admiration for documentary filmmakers. It's a thankless task. The best documentaries, the directors take often incredible risks, deal with enormous moral and ethical dilemmas, and often work for years unpaid. I actually went with Bob Connolly, who's one of our leading documentary filmmakers, who did Mrs. Carey's concert. Did that run here? Yeah, recently, and to talk to the Film Australia board, Screen Australia board, about how hard it is for actually documentary filmmakers now. The way the system is set up in Australia, you've got to have a mentor or a production company to get the funding, where it was always like often a one-off person with a passion who often might have spent years living on nothing to make the film. And he said to the board, he said, well, I'm currently making this documentary about the music department at MLC, and he said, probably if I averaged out what my wage has been, because I've been following this music class for 2 years, it's probably about $250 a week. And they were like aghast. And I think that's the point. You have to admire social documentarians who are making it because of the effect it can have on society. And it's not about, I want to be famous, I want to be in Hollywood or...
If you had one piece of advice to give anybody here who is documentary and wanting to go into documentary filmmakers or is one themselves, what would it be?
Do it.
Nike said it, you're saying it. Just do it.
Yep. Yeah. No, do it. But, I mean, also it's so much easier, and that's the one thing, it's so much easier now because you can, shoot so easily and flexibly, and you can cut at home and so on, and you don't have to worry about the cost of processing stock now and so on. So that has made it even easier, yeah.
If we go into your feature filmmaking career and taking that big step from Australia and heading across into the US to make your first American film, which I think was Mrs. Soffel, wasn't it, with Mel Gibson and Diane Keaton, we saw a little bit there. How challenging was that all that time ago to do that as part of this sort of dubbed new wave of Australian filmmakers?
Well, it was very different. I don't think I quite... I didn't immediately go. I mean, I had a lot of offers after Brilliant Career did so well internationally, but I was very aware that that I'd made Brilliant Career with a wonderful team who were incredibly supportive, and I thought... And I'd never ever... At that point, no Australian film directors were working in Hollywood. I think probably in the year... I think maybe Peter Weir, Bruce Beresford were the first to sort of go. And work in America, and I was having these crazy calls, Dustin Hoffman, Jane Fonda, people ringing me, I'm like, what? And I realise that Americans also don't realise that we're different. I was like, why don't I want to go there and do a film? And anyway, I did definitely make the decision. I want to do my next film in my own country with the same team of people. I knew what a high risk it is. It hadn't all gone in my head, my Brilliant Career. I think whoever was there this morning, I explained how right at the very beginning we nearly made it with another actor, and I think that was kept my feet on the ground forever, because I could see how close success and failure is that close. I nearly made it with the other actor, and it would have been a total disaster. So it wasn't that with all the wonderful praise we got around the world that I went, hey, I'm bulletproof now. I was like, no, I was very lucky. I got away with that one. And I've got a lot more to learn. And, I'll work with the same editor and the same DP and first AD and that was Starstruck, my second film. So it was really only when I was in New York, of course, I had an American agent by then. I said, why do I need an American agent? And then they said, well, we represent writers as well. And I went, oh, okay, that'd be good. Yeah, so scripts were coming and so on. But it wasn't until I was in New York promoting Starstruck when a producer had a project, and I think about it now, and when he's become one of the leading producers in the world, Scott Rudin. And he came and sat down with me, and he said he's got this script, it's based on a true story. And he showed me an image, which is a great way to seduce a director. And it was an image of a jail, which was sort of built like a medieval jail. It turned out it was in Pittsburgh. And He just told me the basic storyline about these two brothers who are prisoners, and one of them fell in love with the warder's wife, Mrs. Sofel. And I was intrigued, and I started working, and I met the writer who's in New York, and then we started working. I think in those days, I was back in Sydney, we were working together by fax or something.
Fax machines.
Fax machines, that's how long ago it was, yeah, yeah. I had no children, and I've got a 26-year-old now, so it was a long time ago. So, yes, so anyway, that was an MGM picture. They've gone as well. I managed to bring my Australian DP, Australian editor, and Luciana Righi, the designer of my brilliant career. The one thing I couldn't bring to America I really wanted was my first assistant. And they said no, union rules wouldn't take that and so on. And I had to, in the end, use someone actually in Canada. We ended up shooting in Canada because it was better for the dollar and also more likelihood to have snow, they hoped. If anyone came in this morning, they found out, of course, that snow all melted the night before the shoot. You know, just one of those things.
And did you find, as well, a female filmmaker at that time also pushing into the States, which is, would have been interesting. Did that add to the challenge for you, or was it a
Oh, yeah, I
pass?
actually didn't even answer your question. So it was completely different. So remind me about the female thing, but forget about the female thing. I'd come from an independent industry. In Australia, we'd raised money, made a film, everyone told each other the truth. When we went 2 days behind, I sat down with the producer and the DP in first to talk about, oh, well, if we keep going behind, I suppose we could cut this or that scene, but let's look at that in 2 weeks' time. And, I was responsible. There was only a certain amount of money, and I knew that if I went right over, then it would come out of something else in post. We juggled, we made compromises, and we made the film. Well, I reached this, it was like I went to Kafka land. It took me a while to work out that nobody believes you, and first of all, we had the first major draft from all the beginning when they loved the script, they loved everything, and then I had the head of studio ringing me in my hotel room about, we hadn't cast Mel. We had Diane Keaton, but we needed an up-and-coming young man, and then I had the head of the studio who only said hi to, ringing me and saying, I've been thinking about your script and, have you thought about Timothy Hutton? And I was like, well, he hasn't quite got the sort of charisma and strength I need. And then I opened the trades the next day and I see Timothy Hutton's in an MGM film that's in turnaround. I mean, the guy's just trying to offload an actor that was on a pay-or-play deal onto my film with all this bullshit about how perfect he was for the part. I mean, this is where it sort of all began. And then I did various tests. We tested, all these up-and-coming young Tom Cruise, Kevin Costner, all this stuff. And actually, Tom did a very good test, but he was too young to look like a boy next to Diane. And because originally the producer said to me, what about Mel Gibson? And I went, well, yeah, I know Mel, but there must be a million Mels in America. And then I realised that actually Mel was very special, and he was perfect for us because he had that sort of edge of danger, and he could do because this guy's a prisoner, but he can read poetry and so on. Anyway, and I'd never even met Mel. So I met him for the first time in LA, and anyway, so we signed him up and so on. Then I'm up in pre-production in Toronto. We're building the sets to match the interior of the real jail in Pittsburgh and so on. And then there's this kerfuffle, and apparently our budgets come in, and because we've got Mel, who's a star, and they hadn't budgeted for 2 stars, only 1, it was now going to be this was a $12 million film, which is now going to be 13. And they were like hysterical, and I was thinking, but I've got 2 stars, like what's the big deal? And then they flew hundreds of them up. They took over the whole floor of my hotel. I'm dragged into these meetings, and there's like, mountains of croissants and plates of food all telling me to cut the budget. And I'm thinking, well, if you hadn't all flown up first class and taken over this floor, that would have been a bit more money on my budget. And then and then they were like, well, we can take, so many weeks out, and you don't need the exterior of the jail. I'm like, it's about a jail breakout? And you may laugh, but they were deadly serious. I mean, isn't there some brick wall somewhere in Toronto where they can just run next to? I said, well, it's the key moment of the film, and they escape. Anyway. And then, when I thought, hang on a second, I just shot Starstruck in Australia for $2 million, and we had a 10-week shoot. I'm now doing a $12 or $13 million film in America with 2 major stars, and it has action sequence, shoot out in the snow, and they want me to shoot it in less time. They want me to shoot it in 8 weeks. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, but the only reason I decided to do a film in America, apart from, I love this story, is that I thought I could, having a bit more money in the budget, I could make a better film. But I'm going to have to shoot it in less time, and stuff that's really complicated, and I've already found out talking to everyone working slow is so much harder. I said, well, this is ridiculous. Sorry, I'm going home. I don't need to do it. They nearly died. I didn't realise. No one says no to American
to croissants.
I mean, I realised also I was very fortunate because for an American filmmaker who'd finally got their first feature backed, where else do they go? I had home. I could go home and make a film in Australia and shoot it in 10 weeks and be with my friends and family. And so that was just the beginning of it.
Right. What was their reaction to that day? What did they do?
Well, then the executive producer came up and he said, Gillian, we've got to sort this out. Both the actors, by the way, I didn't realise that I had incredible power because by then, Mel and Diane just love me. And they went, without Gillian, we're not doing the film.
Nice.
So that was quite good because they're on pay or play, so they didn't want to. And then my executive producer, he said, oh, there's another little minor thing. The producer, the lovely producer, Scott Rudin, who'd seduced me, and he and I then spent 6 months driving around America looking at jails to find one for the film, and we'd gone casting in New York to every theatre show and so on, and very bonded. He's a great man, ended up one of the leading producers in Hollywood. They said, oh, and the studio executive also feels that this whole thing of finding out that it's now gone 1 million over, it's so close to pre, is all Scott's fault, and so he's off the picture. I'm like, what? My producer can be fired? So yes, I learnt a lot. Anyway, so the fatherly older producer came and
So they did fire him?
Yeah.
Wow.
He said, Gillian, this is the only way it can go. We have to take Scott off the film, but it's fine. Once you start shooting, they see the rushes, they calm down. This is always happens in the early stages. And yes, they're saying that they want to take 2 weeks off your shoot. Well, why don't we compromise and take 1 week off? But really, you and I know you need that extra week. So as we start shooting, we'll just, go over a little bit week by week, and they won't care because by then they've seen the wonderful rushes and they'll have calmed down and everything's okay. Because the other thing I didn't realise is, you see, as an Australian director working independently, we're honest. So they thought that when I said I could do the film for 13, they just immediately added 2. She'll go over. It's, so in their mind, so that's why, I was thinking, why is such panic about 1 million or not? And so we started, and the next thing was every second of the day, the studio on the phone, that's the next thing you find out. Your production manager's on the take, because he doesn't care about your film, he cares about whether he gets his next MGM film. So he's like a spy. They were like being told she's only done 1 setup and it's 11:30 a.m. It's now, just after lunch, and they've only done 3 setups. And
at which point did you discover this?
Oh, I thought I had one. The line producer and my executive producer were very much on my side, and they said, look, it's all right. And they would be on the phones all day, calming all the executives down.
This is quite an adventure.
And then then it was, of course, and also and I said, look, everyone knows the first 2 days we're all getting to know each other. It's a bit slow. We'll pick up, blah blah. And meanwhile the snow had melted and there was all that drama going on. But then, 2 days. We're 2 days behind 1 week in, and they were once again all on the plane up. Tell her to go faster in the snow. And I was like, it must have been 2 weeks in because we were out in the snow by then. Snow had fallen again. Just as we were about to move to Quebec, there was a storm and we had to all spend the night in the studio because it was a whiteout. It was interesting shooting in another climate for Australia. Anyway, never ever again a snow picture. I would read snow. Anyway, they're hysterical, 2 days behind. catch that. You know, Edgar had told me that they would still be calm.
Right.
They were not.
They were not calm. No.
This slipping one week, one day thing. They were hysterical about that till about 3/4 of the way through the shoot, and then we didn't hear from them. We went over about 3 days, and we rang and said, "Oh, we've actually finished. In case you want to know," and because we sort of were, you know, we were now on the budget, which was the fantasy budget, which they already had in the back of their mind.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, it was a nightmare. And thank heavens, I mean, my older producer who had to come in, the one who said, Gillian, you know, and Scott will be able to come back in later and everything, he was never allowed. He wasn't even allowed at the premiere.
Wow.
But Edgar, who I did say, I have to say, as a young woman director, I found that men over the age of whatever I was saying then, over the age of 45 are dangerous and I should not work with them because you come from a different generation. You're going to be mean to me. Edgar, in the end, was godfather of my first baby. Got pregnant in post-production in Toronto, and I went home when I was about as big as that. So I actually wasn't at the premiere, unfortunately.
You missed it yourself.
Yeah, I missed it.
And it didn't scar you for life?
Well, as I said, in the end it was my cut. We did win the battles.
Right.
And Edgar was absolutely fantastic. He fought all the time, yelling and screaming at them. He was very dramatic. Sometimes, at one point we'd asked for overtime because we were on location, the snow was melting, it was shrinking. And the horses, it was getting more slippery, it was more dangerous. And we made a case to them, it's better that we stay and shoot on the Saturday rather than everyone go back to the city, because there might be no snow at all to get our last few shots. And we needed to match skies for a scene we'd already shot. And that Saturday morning, I remember I was at the hotel having breakfast and Edgar came down, "Oh, Gillian, the sun's out." I was like, "Edgar, please. Look, just, there's no point crying. Like, I just got to go out there and do what I can." I mean, I did say to him, "Please don't do the Jewish download on me. Go and download it somewhere else." And, we were... by then I had my Australian first in, because we'd had to fire the Canadian that was absolutely hopeless. And so we all just, and we was like, okay, the sky might be blue, well, let's just get out there. Let's set up the first shot, who knows? And in the end, I found out and that all the Teamsters, that's another big thing. There are, these 30 people who drive trucks who then sit around in the warm all day playing cards. They only drive all the vehicles out in the morning and drive you all home at night, and you think, that's where the money's going. Anyway, I found out they're all betting on a horse called Gillian, because every time we went out and it was like, blue and everything, and all right, there's nothing we can do, we'll set up a shot and lay the track and everything. We're like, cloud went over.
Perfect.
The snowflakes fell on Diane's face.
And did you ever, obviously going through that much of a journey in blood, sweat and tears, it must feel far more satisfying than to sit down and watch your picture, especially if you've fought tooth and nail for every little bit of it.
Yeah, I mean, I find watching them all is deeply painful.
On what level?
Well, there's, you always, why did I do this, why didn't I do that? If only I got another take, why didn't I get a closer shot? But, there are moments, there's a few moments I allowed them to put in that show reel that I like. But the one thing I did learn, and I put on my list, was get a very good, strong producer.
Right, to fight some of your battles for you.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I didn't realise how important he was till my next American film. I went back and did another Australian one, but the next American film where I had inexperienced producers, and I saw how, as lovely as they were, they got absolutely bulldozed.
And did you find after you'd had that experience in the States that you were able to go back to Australia, and did it feel easier to make films? Did you feel like you took a whole lot of knowledge back with you to make it, or you just left it behind and moved on?
The knowledge, I'm a slow learner. But, every film you're learning, they've all got a different, there's a new set of problems and a new set of actors, and you always feel like you're learning. But there was a great freedom to have, not to deal with all the interference, all that periphery.
Which must get in the way of the creative process.
It does get in the way. And I was finding out that your production managers stabbing you in the back, and and then you'd find out later, because Russell Boyd was reasonably new to that situation as well, and some of the gear was crap, but the production manager was on a take, there's a deal somewhere. I mean, I realised, what honest, naive race we all are. When you get over
Trusting,
there.
yeah.
And then all those people at the beginning who, we love your work, we love the script and everything. And then they say, oh, you don't need the wall. And and you just realise, and then I did also realise it's so much about timing that when I got, I mean, half the executives who I'd met in the beginning who were involved with us, saw our script and gave us notes and stuff, they were all fired by the time we got back. Not because of me, but because they were in big trouble with 2010, A Space Odyssey, which they'd put, you know, millions and millions in. So a lot of the pressure on me, I realised now in retrospect, was yeah. And so, you know, I had new faces all the time, and by the time because I cut in Canada because my Australian editor wasn't allowed to work in LA. So, you know, got pregnant in Canada and then took the final cut back, and then we were allowed to do the sound mix and everything. Right. On the MGM. And it was wonderful to be on the MGM lot and such a sense of history, and then completely shocking that the equipment is like, you know, they're like old moviola, and we're like, well, we have these flatbeds in Australia, and then like, you know, and you just realise, well, it's because they're not fighting for clientele. No. You're forced, you know, Alan Pakula had just been cutting there. I mean, stuff like that. It was just, the whole thing was a big wake-up call. And that there are a lot of people who, it's a bureaucracy, and they're worrying about their next job in the studio system, so they actually don't really care about your film. So...
and we did briefly touch on being a female director in that environment, and obviously...
Oh, well, yeah, no, truly, they were... There was a sense they were absolutely freaked that they had a woman director. You know, I mean, one of the other things they said to me when the studio went into the panic, they said, I had a woman production manager who'd done Milos Forman's Ragtime and so on, and they said, just between you and me, I think we should let Pat go, because having a woman director and a woman production manager in charge of the money is freaking out the men at MGM.
You would obviously go shopping, wouldn't you? And once a month, God knows what you do with that money.
So, yes, times have changed a bit.
Have they? I hope so.
Yeah, a bit. I still think it is a bit of a boys' club. You know, there's still like a reason why there aren't as many women directors as men directors.
Because earlier this year with Cannes, you were in fact one of the petition signers objecting to the fact that there were no female directors on the list for the Palme d'Or. I mean, we have come a long way in that sense, and we won't dwell on this, but it still feels like that you might feel we've still got a way to go on that front.
Yeah, I think we still have a way to go.
Your Cannes experience, though, must have been pretty spectacularly awesome to be involved at such a high level with My Brilliant Career. Can you tell us a bit about it?
I was so naive. I had no idea, you know, oh, you're in competition. Oh, what's that, you know? And then they said, oh, you've got to have like a long dress. You have to walk up a red carpet. Oh, I mean, I wore to the opening night of Brilliant Career a 1940s op shop dressing gown that I turned backwards and cut the back out. And I think I have hair in a ponytail at the side with a red... rose. You know, now everyone gets some like designer wear. And I was actually telling someone the other night that I had a really disappointing... somebody, I don't know whether it was Wayne Blair was saying it about Sapphires, that he didn't realise how special it was to get a standing ovation. Well, I had a similar experience. We had all the people who were organising the screening and the sale said to you, we've got the best French PR people and they're going to make sure the film in every way is handled the best. And I said, oh, good, good. So when the film screened and the audience all stood up and clapped and called, you know, made Judy and I, Margaret Finkel, stand and bow, I thought it was all sort of orchestrated. And then afterwards, when people were going, oh, wow, they all really loved the film, I said, oh, did they? And they said, yeah. And I said, but I thought, you know, your PR people got people to stand up. And they said, you can't make the French stand up. I was like, oh. So I missed the I know, I was just literally like, oh, thanks, very nice, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, well, I wonder what they really thought. So, but anyway, it did hit me the next day or so.
I hope so. Over your brilliant career, you have worked with some luminaries of the screen. You talked about Mel, of course, the wonderful Sam Neill and Ralph Fiennes and Kate Blanchett. And you've, you know, obviously a couple of times with Kate. Just shooting of Oscar and Lucinda and also Charlotte Gray. How were both of those films for you in terms of your directing experience and the talent you were dealing with?
Oh, well, I mean, all of them have been, you know, an absolute joy to work with. You know, I've been extremely lucky. I think at one time, the first AD, Mark Turnbull, that I did 6 films with, said in my ear, you know how lucky we are. It's like, when you have, actors like Rafe or Kate or, Winona, who's actually is an incredible actress, and Susan Sarandon said it's like the finest racehorses. I'm just tweaking because they're so amazing, really.
Inspirational from a director's point of view, working with people like that too, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, and the camera loves them, so
That's a bonus.
Yeah.
You talk about your interesting casting experience with Mel and Timothy Hutton. How does it generally work for you? Are you a very hands-on, as in very close with your casting director from the beginning of a project, or does it depend?
Ooh, yes. Yes, those who came to my lecture this morning know that, I think that's number 2. I think, maybe script number 1, and then, your cast is so important, and I mean, you have to be hands-on. You're the one who's got to finally decide, can they do it, and are they bringing the character that or some sense of the character. Obviously, it's just the beginning because it's not a final performance in an audition. And I've turned down films, like great scripts that have come to me with an actor attached that I feel, nah, they're wrong.
Right.
Yeah. So,
have you ever been in that rather awkward position, and I know Peter Jackson sent a couple of people packing that might have put a few kilos on before a film, that you've got onto set and someone just hasn't been what you thought they were going to be?
Well, no, because I'm so neurotic about it, about getting it right, because of nearly making that wrong decision on Brilliant Career.
Right.
And I literally, as I saw the rushes, I could see the other person, and I thought, oh my God, imagine I'm sitting here looking at that actor would be wrong. I mean, I have, and I told everyone this morning about my worst Hollywood experience. The one film that was in recut hell and so on was basically because I cast the wrong person. Right. I cast someone who wouldn't screen test, and it was really what you saw, because he's a really good actor, but inside, I do think on the big screen you see inside, you get a sense, in film actors, there's a sense of what the real person, their soul, comes through. I mean, an example of that was when, Kate Blanchett was a nobody when we made Brilliant Career. When I sat at, I was colour grading, and in this old days, you'd run the film silently, and you'd sit with a colour grader. And this wonderful, wonderful Australian colour grader, Arthur Cambridge, who done Brilliant Career and so on, and Picnic Hanging Rock, and was sitting there and going through the rushes, running the cut of the film, but with no sound, and I'd be saying, oh, that's maybe a little yellow, or maybe we could warm that up, can you take that down, maybe a bit green there, and he's got caught up with Kate. He said, is she a nice person? It really comes through that she is. I said, yeah, she is. No dialogue or anything, just watching Kate mute.
With the New Zealand and Australian industries, we're a long way from everywhere else. We sort of have to, the number 8 wire, get amongst it. Do you think that's been a positive over the course of the last sort of 30 years and how our film has come to this point?
Well, I mean, I think it's very important for any country to tell their own stories. I've always been really against the people that and it happens in Australia, like every 6 years someone stands up. What's the thing that's wrong with our film industry is we're not making films like the Americans, and we need to make more films like the Americans, and then they'd sell more and so on. And I completely disagree with that. I think that, that the films that I love have a sense of truth about the place and the character and the time, and they're the films that carry, I mean... And they have to form I think there's a certain responsibility in some respects to form a part of our history as well, don't they? If they're our stories. We should be telling our own stories as well. Agreed. Yeah, we should.
We want to hear some more of your stories, and I think it's about time we opened it up for a bit of a Q&A from you lot, because I'm sure you've got a few questions bubbling away. So we're going to grab a couple of microphones, and if you just want to ponder some questions for Gillian, that would be particularly awesome. We've already got a hand up. I love the politeness of it. It's good, isn't it?
Good to see there's a brave person. Australians never put their hands up.
What do? They just throw a bottle?
No bottle throwing, thank you.
Right.
Kira, I read a lot of Australian film magazines. What stresses you a little bit England. Now, we're supposed to share a common heritage and a common sense of ourselves. So few Australian films get here, and vice versa. So few New Zealand films get to Australia. Do you have any idea why that might be so?
Well, I suppose it's the distributors. I mean, I suppose the film festival's the place where you really see the best. I don't even know what New Zealand films I'm not seeing. But I heard, I've been going to these sessions the last few days, and they say that you're only making like 4 films a year now. So I suppose, we'd be seeing the best of them, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and that should be said for every country, though, shouldn't
we
it?
Saw Boy. Everyone saw Boy, I think. Yeah.
We should be seeing the best
We saw
from each
Whale
country.
Rider. I saw Rain, which I loved.
As well.
Yeah.
I think we have an interesting relationship considering how close we are. It can be said across sport or culture or anything. I sort of feel we judge our films quite harshly, but I don't know if you guys agree. I sometimes feel like we judge the Aussies quite harshly at the same time. And a film, and as a general audience, a film that might be successful in Australia isn't at all guaranteed that it's going to have the same appeal in the New Zealand market and vice versa.
Yeah, well, you'd know better than me, having seen what comes. Yeah. I think Florence Broadhurst, the documentary with the lady with the red hair, I think that ran here. Yeah.
Right, got another one.
Hi, what are you working on next?
I never know the next because it's really about what gets the finance. But I've got 2 or 3 scripts, fiction scripts at different stages. One out in the marketplace, one that's going to shoot in Germany, one in Australia, and then I've also got another documentary like on an artist that I'm developing as well.
Do you find it's easier for you now, with a name, clearly, and a reputation like yours, to be able to pick and choose your projects?
Well, I can definitely pick and choose, although I found the thing that I battled with from the very beginning, Brilliant Career sort of branded me as the woman who does women's pictures about women who want to achieve, which seems a rather selfish thing in life, to want only. So I've been sent for years every script about a woman achiever, the first woman to climb a mountain, fly a plane, you name them, I've been sent them. And which is why I did Starstruck, why I purposely tried to do something that was completely against Brilliant Career. And of course, all the critics then went, oh, so there's a young redhead woman who wants to achieve. I said, it's a brother and sister. It's about the 2 of them. And she's a singer and he's the manager. And it's a comedy, but anyway. And I have got even more picky over the years.
Right.
I've reached a stage where, always the process and the team you work with is important, but it's so hard. I now want it to be fun and work with people that I know I get along with, got the same taste, because it's going to be tough no matter what. But I also say that it has got tougher to raise money for the sort of films that I like, which are character-based dramas for adults. That market has really got squeezed. That there's bigger and bigger money, obviously, in the Spider-Mans and Batmans and the comic book action films, and then and genre pictures, and then the adult dramas budgets have got lower and lower and lower. And in America, there aren't nearly as many scripts just even going around. And some that I've said to my agent, like, oh, I would have quite liked that. And then she said, Jill, they couldn't have even afforded to fly you here. The budgets in America they're all working for absolutely nothing, for and making pictures for $1 million or $1.5 million or something. It is changing. And all the best drama writers are now writing for TV. And then there's fantastic TV. And I'm like probably most people my age, I'm now watching DVD sets, I've spent the last 2 weeks watching Killing 1 and Killing 2. And
which is great.
Fantastic. And obviously I've seen all Mad Men and In Treatment and so on. And so the real character writers are now working for TV.
So has that not tempted you as a director to go
I'm
into?
too old.
You're not too old.
I don't really want to. I mean, you know, to shoot
It's
as a
far more
TV
time-consuming, isn't it? Yeah.
Weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to go there, and as lovely, as much fun as directing is. Like it's enough to like survive a 10-week shoot, but to actually be. And I have to say, the TV directors that do it, they shoot a lot more minutes in the day than I've actually ever been technically capable of. I don't know how they do it. In treatment, I could do it. One person at a desk. I could do that. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm just not that excited anymore about wanting to go live in another country and, you know, get up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m. and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then get renewed and you find you're there for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's a far bigger deal. Oh, there's a question.
Gillian, in your session this morning, you talked about Billy Crudup and the way he didn't like to be directed, and I was wondering, when you're working with actors...
No, how he liked to be. As a unique person, every actor has a different way they like to be directed.
Yes. And so I was wondering, in establishing that, is that something that you actually discuss with actors before you start working with them, or do you discover that just by experience as you are directing them?
Well, I think it is quite good to say to people, I mean to actors, not people, you know...
Big difference.
What have you liked? You know, what sort of methods, you know, how you like to be directed, or what have you found really annoying? I think it's definitely... And I meant to say afterwards, you know, that was my failure that I found out on rap, what was going on. I mean, I probably should have just put him aside and you know, just not... tippy-toed around him for so long and said, "Excuse me, Billy, what are you doing?" But yeah, no, I would say if there are things that really irritate you about working with a director, or tell me about some times, you know, what sort of times have you enjoyed being on a set, or what do you not like, and definitely find things out. I mean, a lot of things, of course, actors won't necessarily be conscious of, and you'll find out.
I think we've got a question. Is that you, Gina?
Yeah. Hi,
Hello.
Gillian. You started out making short films. Do you still have ideas for short films, and what might persuade you to make some short films again? Anything?
Well, I started out making short films to learn. I just blundered out of art school. I called myself a filmmaker, and then I realised I can't make a living. How do I live? So then I realised I have to make longer films. And you know, every film is so bloody hard, I would just not even bother. Oh, I mean, maybe there's one little idea I could put on YouTube or something under a pseudonym. Apparently cats are very popular. I'm going to go in the YouTube cat competition for next year. You'll have to work out which is my cat. I actually don't have cats, I've only got dogs. We'll have to do the dog one.
Do you still see, though, short film is certainly not going anywhere, and there's so many fantastic festivals, from the Show Me Shorts to Tropfest. It is still the platform that people can make that business card,
love
can't
short
they?
films. I mean, I do think short films, as a piece, are like a poem or a short story, and the best ones work completely, you know, on their own. I'm a patron of Flickerfest. And I've been a judge at the Tropfest and the Dendy Awards, and I go and see the short films every year. And I'm a scout for my agent, and I always tell her, I told her to represent Kate Shortland. I saw her 2 short films, whatever it was, 12 years ago, and said, you've got to get this girl. So yeah, I mean, I love a good short, and I'm actually going to. I was talking to Natalie Miller in Melbourne, who's a distributor who runs a Nova cinema chain. Because she bought my graduation short film. It was actually, I mean, 100 a Day was, she bought it and ran the first time I ever, in the cinema. And I said, don't you think we should go back to having short films before the main film, especially in art house cinemas? The art house audiences would be thrilled. And there's really so many good shorts. We could run New Zealand shorts as well.
You could. The changing face of cinema, particularly with the digital age, and as Gina was saying as well, with the internet. As a filmmaker, does that give you more freedom, or does it make things harder?
Well, I've got to say, especially if you're under 30, I was reading such a depressing article with the 2 heads of Sony Classics who distribute films of Woody Allen, Pedro Almodovar, and so on, and they said, if the youth culture do not understand how detrimental it is to illegally download. There will be no future in art house cinema. I mean, it is a serious, serious problem. I mean, all the people who are downloading, you know, these films who want to one day be Quentin Tarantino or Spielberg and live in a mansion in Hollywood, there'll be no mansions for you because there's no money, because you're all getting those films for nothing. I mean, don't you realise in the end, and also art house cinemas seem to be fewer and fewer, and the seasons are shorter and shorter. I mean, I'm shocked I see films that I want to see and they're like gone in 2 weeks. I think we're really in a situation that is a crisis, and I heard Ted and a couple of other speakers speak about it. And I read an article recently, David Putnam said the same thing as Ted Hope, and that is we need to change the system now and make it like an iTunes thing, that it's easy for you, so you therefore will pay. Or else, as the two guys who, Sony Classics, who put money in most of the art house movies and distributed them worldwide, they just said, you know, it's over. We'll be out of business.
Because there's certainly no magic bullet for this.
No.
In any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
Any other questions, peeps? Oh, there's one.
Hi, Gillian.
Hi.
I'm interested about documentary directing and what role you think the director has in, well, I'm interested in your view about whether a director should be observational and allow the documentary to tell the story, or if there should be a position taken by the director from perspective.
Well, you do take a position in the editing room, don't you? Because you do decide what's in and what's out. I personally have fought with my documentaries not to have narration, but I don't think even that there's any rules. I don't like the obvious narration where it's telling people what to think, but no documentary filmmaker can say they're not objective, because you went out and shot 100 hours of film and you edit it down, so you made decisions all along of what story you're telling. But what I've found in documentary filmmaking is how tough it is, because you are making these ethical decisions, especially the documentaries about people's lives. You know, and you know more than they know, because you've used all your tricks to get them to relax on film, and you film for so long they've forgotten the camera's there. But one day they're going to be up on a screen or, you know, on television, and everyone's going to see them, see that they're a Tamil tiger. I mean, I know I'm now a really, you know, I've got real street cred as a documentary filmmaker. My Florence Broadhurst thing was in Sundance, and I was in the van with all the other young filmmakers going to Sundance, and I've been asked back as a jury a member of the jury for the documentaries. And one of the jury members is a French filmmaker, and he's actually currently making a film about the ethical dilemmas of when you're, you know, like shooting in a war zone, and do you keep shooting the person dying on the ground because you're telling mankind, or do you actually try and get down and stop the blood? You know, I think there's so many, and he showed me footage of and interviewed a Danish woman filmmaker who'd interviewed the mother of a Tamil tiger rebel, and that mother was shot a month later for speaking on the documentary. So, you know, you're dealing with real people's lives. I mean, in my little situation where they're just talking about, you know, their husbands and wives, even that, you know, after I did the second one with the Josie, who got pregnant at 15, her family were so upset that she was on television talking about being an unmarried mother at 15, that they didn't speak to her for a year, thanks to my film. So there's a lot. You are the one making the decision. I made the decision to put her in the film. She's since forgiven me and talked to the family, and actually has become a role model for unmarried mothers and given a lot of people a sense of hope. So I feel justified. But you are treading in delicate territory.
Any other questions?
But I think today's documentaries, if you have a really strong point of view, you sort of have to fess up. And like the audiences are no longer, they're not dumb about it. I mean, it's almost, the personal documentaries, I think, where the filmmaker, I mean, like I put myself in the last one because people said to me, they said, those girls are obviously talking to someone they really have a great warm relationship with, and we never see you, and I used to cut all my questions out. But the last one, I made it more like a conversation. I overlapped the dialogue and everything. I thought, everyone knows I'm there. They all know it's me. You know, it's sort of foolish to pretend that I'm not there. And I do think that there's, people expect more honesty from the filmmaker and the fact that you are there and a camera is there now.
And I think you've been on the journey with the girls right from the very beginning, so you're as much a part of the story, perhaps.
I ended up having to be part of the story,
just to finally wrap, one more question?
Very quick. Since you made the documentary about Florence Waters, do
you
know anything more about the circumstances of her death?
We really wanted to solve it. I had a writer structuring that documentary. And by the way, I do think feature documentaries need a structure, a story, to take... And Catherine Thompson was determined, but we got it down to 6 possible, which is pretty amazing, as if there were actually 6 real people that wanted to kill you. She did have 6 real people, but the general feeling it was these lawyers who had this, a funny investment scheme going, and she was going to spill the beans on them who did her in. That's, her couple of friends who lived in fear for years because they thought that, because basically she was murdered to shut her up. So everybody else in the other ladies in society who were investing in that scheme all shut up for years. But we did get a couple to finally speak on camera.
And just very finally, a question I'm sure you would find it very difficult given what we've learnt in the last hour. Is there any, whether it's, you've told us about studio execs flying in and snow and pregnant teenagers, is there any one thing that you've done as in part of your cinematic career that you have found the most personally satisfying?
Well, it's very hard because, as a neurotic perfectionist, well, I wish all of them were better. And, I actually think, if anything, and I shouldn't, I think the last 2 films I really stuffed up the script. I mean, it was rule number 1. Both, I think, death-defying acts. We had a terrible thing with finance. We had a financier who was very wobbly and lied to us about the budget. And so we found out we had $2 million less than we thought we had. And we're only 4 or 5 weeks away from shooting, and it's a really bad time to start ripping pages out, which is what we did. And I think that I didn't set up Catherine Zeta-Jones' character well enough at the beginning of that film. So that's a great disappointment to me.
Right.
And also, we got into a terrible situation. They want us to make a trailer. We're still making the film for the American film market, and we made such a fantastic trailer that Harvey Weinstein bought it for a huge amount of money. Sorry, where's Keith? Somewhere there, yeah. But you had the film. I mean, we sold. This is people buy, and it doesn't work in the end. The same thing. The Shonky sales agent who lied about the money also lied. We didn't know. My producer and I lied to Harvey and said it was more of an action film with all Houdini doing stunts. So when he got this film, which is really about a mother-daughter and a sort of psychic relationship with Houdini. Wasn't what he wanted, and he was so angry that he'd spent all that, signed a deal with that money, that we were, basically it was like, well, we'll just finish the film off, and it was sort of dumped. So that, it was a very disappointing experience after all that hard work and effort, and it was, the usual thing, it was 4 years to get it up, that ended up. So I'm sorry, I'm ending with negative stories.
Yeah, I wanted a good one.
A good one.
I think you're far too self-deprecating.
Let me think. Little Women, everything in the cast came together, I have to say. It was a very happy shoot, and I think that everything that we'd planned, we being me and my first, planned about how to help the girls get in character and so on. I think it came through, that there was a real sense of sisterhood.
Wow.
It was it's a classic American novel. I was an outsider doing that story, and So it was a great relief that we pulled it off. And they still run it every second Christmas in America, and I get residuals.
Yes! That's something to be proud of. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I've gone 5 minutes over time with you. We could sit here for another hour. Thank you all for coming, and please join me in a massive thank you to the wonderful Gillian Armstrong for joining us.